My name is Ayaka Okuda. I'm 21 years old and in my 4th year of university. This time, I'd like to talk about the time I experienced a horrible interview from an immoral interviewer. I'm a normal university student. My grades are so-so, and I don't stand out that much. Up until now, my uni life had mainly been revolving around parties, so I can't say I had been working hard. If I speak honestly, I was living a pretty common campus life. However, in my 3rd year, the time finally came for me to start job hunting, just like my classmates. Just as I had heard in rumors, the job hunting was tough. I could feel that I was tired out physically and mentally. I regretted playing around so much and reflected that I should have prepared in advance. The toughest part was the interviews. There are a lot of types of interviewers, and what type you would be faced with was a matter of luck. A relatively nicer example of an interviewer would be,
Okay, so introduce yourself.
The type that looks pretty tired, and you're not sure whether he's actually listening or not. Or,
Seriously? No way!
the overly friendly type who acts like your best buddies.
The baseball season this year looks pretty good. Who are you watching out for?
The one that keeps going on and on about the hobby you have in common. You know you're unlucky when you get.
I can't hear you! Speak clearly! You're useless!
The type that likes to be intimidating and nitpick. When this type comes around, you're bound to get a lot of damage, mentally. Personally, I don't want to have to work in a company that employs an interviewer like that. With all the interviews and the horrible experiences, the best thing to keep close by is a good friend. For me, that was Mina, who's in the same year as me. We would complain and gossip, let out our frustrations, and encourage each other for the next interview. I always feel much better after talking to you. If only we could work together one day. I hope so too, but that all depends on our effort and our luck. Even if one of us gets hired first, we've got to promise not to hold a grudge. Of course, no matter what, we'll always be friends. Mina and I had mostly applied for different companies, but there was just one company that we had both applied for. This company had split its interviews over a few days. Mina would have hers on the first, and my interview would be on the second day. Tell me how it went when you come back. Sure! A few days later, I messaged Mina around the time I thought her interview would be over, but something was off about her. How was your interview? Okay? Ayaka, I don't know if I can do it anymore. I've lost all my self-confidence. Huh? What happened? You were so positive about your interviews yesterday. I went to have my interview today. I know, that's why I'm messaging you. It was terrible. Terrible? I'm too scared to go to any other interview. What? What do you mean? I can't concentrate. What do I do? Okay, just breathe. You shouldn't be alone right now, so I'm heading over. Is that okay? Yeah, I'm waiting. Something was very wrong. Mina was usually so cheerful and positive. I couldn't imagine what could have depressed her this way. I wonder what kind of interviewer it was. I rushed over to Mina's place. As soon as she saw me, she started crying. It was on a level I had never seen before. Ayaka! Mina, what happened? After she had cried for a while, I rubbed her back until she was ready to speak. When she had finally calmed down, she began to speak about what had happened at the interview. It seems that she had experienced quite an intimidating interview today. It's not that uncommon. I've experienced them before. Of course, Mina has too. But seeing Mina so scared and upset was a first for me, and I had my interview coming up the next day. If Mina's like this after her interview, then there's no way I can handle it. Then, I remembered that one of our guy friends, Kimura, had an interview with the same company. I quickly messaged him. Hey, I just want to ask something. Do you have time?
Yeah, sure.
You had an interview at the same company as Mina today, right?
Yeah. You have an interview there tomorrow, right?
Yep. I have a question about that. I heard that it was pretty horrible. Can you tell me how your interview went?
Horrible? Really?
Huh? Yeah, Mina's pretty upset about it.
She had a horrible interview?
Yeah, I'm worried about mine, so I thought I should ask you.
It was pretty normal to me. There were 3 other guys at the same time as me, and they were pretty normal too.
I wonder if you had a different interviewer.
It's the same room, so I don't think so. More importantly, is she okay?
She's really troubled by it. She says she's lost the confidence to go to another interview.
Doesn't seem like she's exaggerating. I have another friend who had an interview there. Let me ask them.
Thanks, you're a great help. Kimura said that there was nothing odd about his interview. I was pretty confused by the contrast. It didn't seem like Mina was lying, but it didn't seem like Kimura was lying either. It became the day of my interview, and I was very nervous. However, the mystery would soon be solved. The next day, I made my way to the interview. There were a total of 4 people waiting to be interviewed. 1 more woman and 2 men. The interviewers were an important-looking middle-aged man, seated in the middle, and 2 company workers on either side of him. The man in the middle introduced himself as Aizawa and told us to introduce ourselves. Each of us spoke our names and our universities. When the 2 men had finished their introductions, next up was the woman seated next to me, called Hino. I'm from ABC University. I'm majoring in finance. Thank you for this chance. Just like the 2 men, I thought her introduction was very normal, but as soon as she was finished, the interviewer called Aizawa scoffed. What's up with that reaction? He doesn't seem nice at all. I had been listening to Hino's introduction too, and there didn't seem to be anything weird or remarkably bad. If anything, she spoke more clearly and confidently than the 2 guys before her. Hino herself seemed to be put off by Aizawa's reaction. By the way, he had the same kind of reaction after I had finished my introduction too. Since Hino finished talking, I had had a bad feeling, and it seems that I wasn't wrong. We were asked our reasons for applying, and when Hino's turn came, she began to speak, but I'm aiming for the planning department. Even in university, I have...
That's enough. I've heard that one plenty of times.
Aizawa had cut across Hino's words.
In the end, you're just gonna end up getting married or pregnant and leave anyway. In other words, you're just applying in order to find a husband.
And spouted some unbelievably misogynistic prejudices. Hino lost her composure for just 1 second, but replied strongly. No, that's not true. I am seriously...
Enough, enough!
He didn't even look her in the eye as he fiddled with his pen, smiling all the while.
Then, you have a boyfriend at the moment?
He hadn't listened to her properly, but suddenly started asking private questions. If he's doing it on purpose, then I don't see his point. No, I don't. Even while coming close to tears, Hino tried her best to respond.
Are you sure? You look like the type that likes to play around. Or are you not interested in sticking to one guy?
His attitude was so bad, I could only think that he had something personal against Hino. Hino ended up looking down and away from Aizawa. I can't blame her. I'd like to make it clear that he didn't act this way with the 2 guys. He actually seemed frank and easy to speak to. What I'm trying to say is that he only acts like this with women. I don't know why. Maybe he doesn't want to hire any women. But no matter what the reason, this is way too unreasonable. My anger finally hit the limit. After Hino, it was my turn.
So the next person is from MoniRobo University? You got the guts to apply to our company from a university like that?
He was supposed to be asking my reason for applying, but instead started insulting my education. But I had no intention of giving in to him. It wasn't just for Hino. It was for Mina and all the other girls who had been disrespected by this interviewer. Yes, I passed preliminary checks and I received a notification that I was very welcome to have an interview. What's your problem? I wouldn't want to work in a company with a guy like this anyway. I don't want to pass the interview, so I can argue back all I like. The room tensed up thanks to my attitude, but there was no turning back. In the first place, the 2 other interviewers, who haven't tried to stop the interview, and the 2 male interviewees are guilty of the same thing. I assured myself that I was the only one who could say the right thing, and held my head high.
Your attitude tells us a lot about the way you've been brought up. Our time is wasted having to interview people like you.
In response to my approach, Aizawa also spoke with venom in his words. But unfortunately, I wouldn't be budged. A waste of time? You're being paid while you're in this room, right? I'm so jealous that you can get paid for sitting around like that. I definitely want to get a job here. The people around us began to show their panic at how the situation had changed. Once he heard my words, Aizawa finally spoke his true feelings.
This is why I hate women. As soon as you say something a little harsh, they start crying or lose their temper.
Apparently, he doesn't know that that's called discrimination. You can tell how bad the company is just by looking at the interviewer. What you're doing is being misogynistic and attacking our personalities. Why are you asking these kinds of questions?
This is to see if you're suitable for the job. Once you're an adult, there are plenty of times you'll be told terrible things.
Then why didn't you ask the other two interviewees? Why was it just directed towards me and this lady? Aizawa finally stopped speaking when he heard my argument. There's nothing he can say to justify what he's done. Then, he took out my CV, raised it up, and ripped it into pieces before throwing it away, right in front of me.
Enough! We don't have the time to deal with people like you. That's it for today. The other 3 candidates will have their interviews rescheduled for another day. You are never to come through our doors ever again!
I wouldn't work here, even if you begged me. You should be ashamed of yourselves for making this man an interviewer and for not stopping him. As for you two, your nothing to do with me attitude will only make things worse for you. I don't recommend working here. I said just that and left the room. I finished the interview feeling much better once I had said everything I needed to. On my way home, I was stopped by Hino. I thought she was going to complain that I had ruined her interview, but instead, she thanked me very politely. Thank you so much for helping me today. Thanks to you, I feel much better. I'm planning to reject the next interview here, so let's do our best at an interview elsewhere. We parted ways with a smile. I'm glad that even though I couldn't do anything for Mina, it was worth speaking my mind for Hino. Hey, Mina! How are you? Have you had another interview? No. You encouraged me a lot, so I think I can do it. Anyway, you had your interview today, right? How was it? It was horrible. That Aizawa guy is a piece of crap. It seems he's extremely sexist. He was only horrible to the women. Now that you say it, he was really normal towards the boys. Right? So I spoke my mind. No way! What did you say? I don't want to work in a company that hires a guy like that. I got revenge by telling them everything I thought. I'm so jealous. If only I could have done that. I don't recommend it. The room went silent and my stomach hurt. That kind of situation is way too abnormal, so don't worry about it. Yeah, thank you, Ayaka. I'm so glad you're my friend. Me too. After that, I went to have interviews at several other companies. None of them were as bad as that Aizawa. He was way too irregular. It was surprising that there weren't any other women who had publicly criticized him and his company. Well, I didn't want to have anything to do with them, and had my next interview, so it's not like I was able to do anything either. At the very least, so that my underclassmen wouldn't have the same problem, I spread the information that Aizawa and that company were guilty of holding discriminatory interviews. And it was a miracle, but I finally found a job with a major company after all the job hunting. I was able to escape the war called job hunting, and reflecting on my past behavior, decided to work harder on my skills and qualifications. If I only play around, it's sure to bite me on the ass like these interviews did. After I started work in April, my life as a working adult finally began. When walking around the company, I was called out to by a man who was in his 50s and looked like he was in a much higher posting.
Congratulations for getting the job! I was waiting for you.
Thank you very much. I still have a lot to learn, but I hope I can do well here. The truth is, I've been his acquaintance from quite a while back. I guess you could call it a special relationship, but I'm keeping that a secret within the company. A few years later, I've gotten used to the work, and since last year, I've been working in human relations. In April, there were a few changes made, and a new section chief was hired. That new section chief was the person I had least expected.
My name is Aizawa. I'll be working with you from today as your section chief.
It was the immoral and sexist Aizawa. I had been hired by a parent company to Aizawa's company. It wasn't strange that we would eventually meet. I don't know if it was because he remembered me, but he was already giving me grief.
I didn't think a woman like you would be working in this company. What connections did you use to get in?
I've grown up a bit, so of course I avoided answering back with attitude. I was very fortunate to get this job. We're colleagues now, so let's be professional and forget about the past. I was able to ignore and smile away his comments, but he must have really hated me, because he began to use me for chores and jobs he didn't want to do. Well, he is my manager, so there's no helping it. If it were just me, I would have stayed quiet. However, he was demanding of all the other workers too. His attitude towards female employees was especially hard to ignore. Ever since he had arrived, everyone had clearly lost their motivation, and some female employees had even resigned. The atmosphere within the section was tense. Aizawa's obnoxiousness was much worse than the average horrible boss. He really shined when it was time for the interview season. Like every year, there were many applicants arriving to have their interview. The nightmare had come back to haunt me. As usual, Aizawa was taking a discriminatory attitude towards the female applicants. But of course, I wasn't going to let it slide. Mr. Aizawa, please stop making those kinds of comments. What's the point? Even if I warned him quietly.
Shut up! Keep quiet and make notes. If you can't do that, then get out!
Even though it was during an interview, he had no problem shouting at me. I couldn't endure it any longer. I decided to make my move, as payback for that time as well. Just as Aizawa had asked, I left the room, and I made one phone call while I was out. Hello, I'd like some advice. Would you have any time to talk this evening? He must have felt lucky, being able to get a job in the parent company. But it was his final luck. He would soon realize it. The next day, there were more applicants to interview. The interviewers were the same as yesterday, Aizawa and I. The first group of applicants entered the room. This time, it was 3 men and 1 woman, 4 people in total.
Very good! I have high expectations of you. Thank you very much.
He hadn't changed one bit. He was frank towards the male applicants.
So, do you have a boyfriend? Hurry up and answer me.
And was like this towards the female applicants. Even the male applicants began to look at one another, shocked. This time, the female applicant's response was different to the usual and was more in line with how I had reacted. Before I answer, I'd like to know the reason for the question. I believe it has nothing to do with the work. Aizawa didn't back down either and continued his questions.
Just answer me. Do you have a reason not to tell me? What, do you have several boyfriends or something?
Aizawa was smirking, but the university student didn't look afraid at all. I don't have the obligation to answer. Also, do you know that asking something like that counts as sexual harassment? Aizawa began to get irritated, perhaps because she didn't give him the reaction he expected.
How dare you take that kind of attitude with me? Damn it, this is why I hate women!
Then, just like he had done with mine, he took her CV and ripped it up into little pieces.
Get out! Someone like you doesn't belong here!
Aizawa pointed at the door, clearly proud of himself. Then, the door of the interview room opened.
Pardon me.
The man that appeared from behind the door was the man that had called out to me when I first got the job. The man who I have a secret relationship with. As soon as he saw the man's face, Aizawa went pale. I couldn't blame him, because the man was Mr. Kaneo, the managing director. He is also my uncle from my dad's side. This is why I kept our relationship secret from my colleagues. I didn't get the job through my connections, by the way. I hid the fact that we were related when I went for my interview, and when I told him the results of my interview, he said, "You really got the job! Hats off to you!" On the other hand, it's my motto to use my connections when I really should use them, and I had called my uncle yesterday and gotten advice from him about Aizawa. My uncle had come to see for himself and called out to the female applicant.
Well done. You could go home now.
Understood. I'll be leaving first. After being told by my uncle, the woman left the room. Aizawa looked confused. He clearly didn't understand the situation. The truth is, that woman was a fake, set up by my uncle. After hearing about what happened, my uncle decided to send in a spy in order to get a better idea of what was going on in the interview room. She was wearing a microphone, so my uncle could hear exactly what was being said in the interview. It meant that Aizawa's sexist questions were all heard by my uncle. When he had explained that to him, Aizawa began to make excuses to my uncle.
There's been a misunderstanding. I just wanted to be sure that they were able to endure that kind of questioning.
The exact same excuse he made that time too. But even the applicant still seated in the room could tell that there was no way that excuse would be accepted. I'm very sorry. We will be rescheduling interviews for you all another day, so please take your leave. After having the applicants leave the room, we began to make our move on Aizawa.
That kind of excuse won't work, Aizawa. What you said was harassment. I wouldn't be surprised if you were taken to court.
No way! I always use this method. And I've never been told something like that!
In your previous company, you were in a much higher position, so everyone must have been too scared of you to say anything. The HR changes made this year wasn't your lucky chance. It was to make sure that there were people in higher positions than you!
Once he heard the true reason for his transfer to the parent company, Aizawa lost all the color in his face. Of course, there was more to his punishment.
What's more, there have been too many complaints about you within the company. Unfortunately, you won't be here for very much longer.
He was fired by the managing director himself. Aizawa lost the strength to stand and fell to his knees. He deserves it. It's so refreshing. I feel like making a video and sending it to Mina. After that, we watched Aizawa leave the building. He got what he deserved. With this, all the people who had suffered under Aizawa in his previous company have been avenged. By the way, there had been a few notifications from people who said that they were planning to sue Aizawa for his verbal abuse. It was unfortunate that we couldn't see how that would turn out for him.